EFT, we say we need to experience an emotion to get over it. So I want to talk about my emotion right now. I'm stressed. I'm present in front of a group of EFT therapists and also supervisors and lovely trainers that I know. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. So, thank you for the introduction. The only things is that I'm a PhD student in couple and family therapy at Michigan State University. I used to be in California for a while, but I recently relocated to Michigan, so I'm part of Michigan community for EFT, and I'm licensed in both states of Michigan and California, providing psychotherapy for couples and individuals and families. So, as it shows in our topic, we're going to talk about working with neurodiversity in EFT. First, let's talk about neurodiversity, which is like a new term that I know that some of you might not be familiar with, some of you might have heard of it. It's kind of like a new term that it's for like late 1990s, and it's kind of like an umbrella term for different kinds of like disorders. But there's a reason to call it neurodiversity, which we talk about it today. But I want you guys to imagine a scenario. All of you are therapists. So imagine you're working with a couple and you found one partner being different. What I mean by different, it's not only different from the other partner, but also different from your experience and typical experience. Let's call it that way. How do you work with that? What do you do with that dynamic? How do we address the challenge? And the challenge is difference. There is a difference here. So the difference might be culture. They're coming from different culture than the culture that you're coming from, your ethnicity. They might come from like different experience of grief or different behavior, different way of talking. For example, some partners are very talkative, some not. So neurodiversity is about the difference, not about the disorder. Although neurodiversity has kind of a disorder in it, as used to be called disorder, and I don't want to say it's not disorder, but I would say like, as in EFT, we say like, let's call it in a different way. Let's not labelize that. That's why we call it neurodiversity, and we want to call it as a difference. So, now, when we see a difference, we need to address it. There's no way to avoid from that difference. Whether it's culture, or different brain functioning, or different behavior, we need to address it in a session. That's why, when it comes to neurodiversity, which is very common recently, we need to talk about it, that what is that difference, and how I can address it in a session, in my couple's dynamic. So, as I said, neurodiversity is an umbrella term. So the most common one that we all familiar with is autism spectrum disorder and ADHD. But there are different kinds of like cognitive and developmental differences. They might come from like it might actually include in neurodiversity. And so there are different ways. So neurodiversity is not limited to these actually disorders or differences, but also more of this. But the most common one, as I said, autism and ADHD, that we usually face in therapy sessions. So, I can't go over all the details of this slide, but I believe it's important to consider and read more about it. But I'll go over some of them that are related to relationships. Because some of them are for individuals who are neurodivergent, but some of them are more common, and we see it in couples dynamic when we come to couple therapy. The first one is about excess of neurons, over connectivity or under connectivity. So imagine, like you're familiar with neurons, how neurons work in the brain. So when there's over connectivity, they are going through experience a lot of things in a moment, right? So they might be more sensitive to some things, or for underconnectivity, they might be slower than typical people. So just imagine when we talk about being slower, or we talk about being more sensitive to some triggers, how does that affect the relationship? So they will usually easily get triggered, and the trigger goes to the other partner and goes to the dynamic, pursuing, withdrawing, and all goes around. So that's a part that you need to consider, that there is a difference in their neurons. That's why we call it neurodiversity. And the other one that I want to talk about here is the delayed brain response of auditory signals. So imagine that they actually being more sensitive and delayed in response to auditory signals from their partners. So not from other people, because when you talk to someone stranger, you realize that there is like a delay. You will actually tolerate that, you'll go ahead with it. But imagine you're in a relationship with someone that has this difference. How does that impact your relationship and impact you? How do you perceive this difference? We tend to be actually pessimistic when it comes to this, and we think of, is there a problem with me? Or do you have a problem? Why are you stuck in this? And they tend to get stuck in their dynamics more often. And mirror neuron system. You're all familiar with mirror neuron system because we are EFT therapists and work a lot with empathy. And so just imagine someone having an issue with their mirror neuron system, they might tend to not actually show their empathy. They will not empathize with us, and that's really hard for a couple, for a partner to be in a relationship and not getting empathy from their partner. Not because they don't want to provide empathy, because it's not easy for them. There is a difference in the way they provide that or the way they see that, it doesn't work in a typical way for them. And the other things that I have very limited time in the presentation, that's why I'm not getting the chance to go over all of them, but when we talk about neurodiversity and differences in neurons, we talk about brain function, the way the brain works. And when it comes to relationship, the all matters is the way the brain works, because the behavior comes from what we feel and what we actually, the cognition works, what does it mean to us? It all happens in a brain function, and so there's a difference here. So, as I said here, neurodiversity isn't simply a label, so we don't want to labelize that. It doesn't work to say, oh, okay, so maybe you can go to psychiatrist, get the diagnosis. Oh, really, that's great, you got a diagnosis. And now we know that the problem is you, that you have this diagnosis. It doesn't work that way. Even, I don't want to say that autism is not a disorder. We know that it's spectrum. In some ways, even you might work with a couple that the partner being really extreme in that spectrum and really dealing with it. But as a couple therapist, it doesn't work to call it as a disorder. But in EFT, we believe like it's important how you call it, right? Important how you say it, right? When you say neurodiversity, it looks better, right? It's a difference. It's not a problem. And the problem is that they tend to, those partners, the neurodivergent partners, they tend to actually feel bad about what they're going through. They know they are different. They know more than us, right? So when they come to session, actually, it's really hard for them to be in a session with the EFT therapist, providing empathy, talking about like what is happening in their dynamic. They feel ashamed. They feel like they're shrink. Like, oh, I don't get it. What are you talking about? You're asking me, what do you feel right now? I don't know what I'm feeling. So they tend to go shrink and withdraw. And so sometimes if you don't address this difference, what happens is that they withdraw more. We come to their dynamic and we help the pursuer to pursue more, and the partner, this withdrawer, he might withdraw more in the session. So when we call it as a difference, that okay, we have a lot of things that are different, so that's another difference, and let's address it, let's talk about it. And another thing that might happen in the session that we want to like say like, oh, that's the content, let's get over like that, let's talk about the process. That's the process, it's having the session. It's a huge difference that they are in a couple therapy because of this difference. That's the biggest trigger, and they want to be addressed. So we don't want to actually, it's not simply a label, it's about comprehensive difference that influence behavior. Definitely the way neurodivergent partner behave is really related to the way his or her brain works, right? So when we see that as a difference and we address it, we can see that, oh, okay, the dynamic, the cycle work when we address the main issue, main trigger that might be about neurodiversity. And here, as you see, neurodiversity and attachment lens in EFT. So we have the cycle of pursuing versus withdrawing, but with neurodiverse couples, there's a cycle of neurotypical versus neurodivergent. So this difference, as you might call it as a content, but I'll call it as a very important difference, it actually shows an ascension in the process that, as I said, neurodivergent partner feels ashamed that I'm less. I'm not being enough because I'm not able to provide empathy to my partner. I'm not able to recognize my emotions or my partner emotions. How does that work? That's really hard to feel that way. And so it's important to see them and help them to see. Actually, as EFT therapists, we usually help them to see, experientially see the cycle of pursuing withdrawing. So it's important to show them the neurodiversity cycle, that, oh, it looks like the difference. Actually, you as a neurodivergent might withdraw. Mostly, I don't want to say always neurodivergence withdraws, but sometimes, typically, they withdraw. So when you withdraw, the neurotypical feels like I'm being less, not having like a typical partner. That's a problem of me. I'm having like a partner that not being able to empathize with me. And they tend to pursue more to get their needs met. But we know that doesn't work. So as what we are doing here is helping them to see how it goes. And when we talk about neurodiversity and talking about diversity, we're helping them to actually not labelize and help the neurodivergent partner to feel like you have a difference. I see it, but that's not a problem of your dynamic. Even if they are in a spectrum, for example, autism spectrum, they are like in very high range of autism, this is something that they can work individually with. Right? They can go to individual therapists, psychiatrists, get med, whatever it is. That doesn't relate it to their dynamic. What is happening in that relationship is what happened between both of them. So it's not about diagnosis, it's not about actually autism, that they're getting stuck in their cycle. It's about that this autistic or actually neurodivergent partner feels ashamed and being pursued by another partner, and they go into the cycle, typical cycle. So that's why I'm trying to say, like, it's very important to call it neurodiversity, not autism. Even if you talk about autism, put it in that umbrella term of neurodiversity, because it helps them to feel like, oh, okay, I'm not a problem with the relationship. I'm just different. As all people might be different. You might work with the couples that they're coming from cultures, and some of them like come from like a partner being immigrant. So he has like a different experience than another partner, and they're in a different country. They might feel different, and I don't understand. I'm cool with my partner's friends who go out, and I feel like I don't belong to this community. I'm not feeling like actually fit to this community, and that's really hard to feel that way. And what it helps for the neurodivergent partner that going through this feeling is that we hear you. We can validate that. Totally understand that we get stuck when you feel not enough and you feel different. So, navigating neurodivergent challenges in a relationship, there are like a few, I put a few of them here, and we talk about this today, but there are more of this that maybe later in some trainings we can talk about it more. But here, the first one is masking. So just imagine, for a partner that feels, I'm not enough, how does that work? They try to mask themselves to fit in, right? Because they feel like, oh, I feel different, I'm neurodivergent, I don't understand things, so let me mask myself with a different mask and come to the session. Sometimes you might see a couple, a neurodivergent partner come to the session talking a lot about things and knowing a lot about psychology, psychotherapy, right? They read a lot of books about it because they try to mask. They don't want to feel what they're going through. Because they feel like if I want to go through what I'm feeling right now, what's going on, it is not being able, I'm not being able to tolerate that. It's a lot for me. So, and we know in EFT, we work on emotions, and if the partner, if actually the client not being authentic, that's not easy to work with. That's not going to be an authentic feeling there, authentic person. You're trying to mask it. And it's very important to see it and empathically try to actually reflect. There's a difference. I see there's like something happening here. Sometimes they might need like more individual sessions because they tend to put this mask in front of their partners because they feel ashamed in front of their partners. So in an individual session, they might open up with the lines you build as a therapist with them. They might be able to open up with you and help them to get rid of this mask and not masking. Because if they keep their masking, it doesn't work to work EFT with couples. The second one is alexithymia, which I believe most of you are familiar with. I actually recently realized that alexithymia is a Greek word, and that means like no words for feeling, right? And that's a good definition of that. Because people with alexithymia, they tend to like not being able to recognize their own emotions and also not be able to recognize the emotions of their partners or other people. And just imagine how hard it is, right? In social interaction, they feel like, I don't see, even their partner's crying, they don't see what's going on here, I don't get it, right? And if they're going through like a tough feelings, they don't know how to say it. I had a couple, the guy was neurodivergent. Whatever I was asking him, what do you feel right now? He was saying, pain, I feel pain. And after some like sessions, I realized that this is the word that he learned over time, but now this is the only word he has, right? So that's why he feels something. He can see that I'm going through something, but I don't know what it is. I can't name it. So what helps? It helps to use like different tools in therapy. We as a therapist, we have like different tools and interventions that we can apply in EFT, such as one thing that I use in my work with neurodiverse couples is feelings wheel. I believe most of you are familiar with feelings wheel. It helps a lot with these people because when we build alliance, when they're willing to open up, but they're having like alexithymia, so you're helping them. Oh, help me understand it. Can you be more specific? Let's share, you're doing like a Zoom, you share the feelings wheel, or even you ask them to copy, have a couple like they copy in their room, so whenever we're having that session, the neurodivergent partner has the copy of the feelings wheel and going through it like, oh, I feel annoyed. That's great. You're in front of a neurodivergent partner and saying like, I'm annoyed. Specific feeling that we can work on. And when they talk about it, they can feel better. And we as a human being, we can change. We can actually, even for neurodivergents, when they actually train themselves to recognize their feelings and we help them with naming their feelings, after a while they realize that, oh, I'm getting better in that. It's helping me to recognize emotion in my partner because the therapist in a session helping us to see, like, for example, my partner going through like a feeling and therapist reflects, but can you see your partner, what's happening in your partner? Can you help your partner understand what you're going through? Because you already addressed the difference. Now the partner, neurotypical partner, understands the difference. Now she's open to, or he's open to actually hearing the partner or open up more about her experience about what she's going through and help the neurodivergent partner to understand him or her better, right? So alexithymia is something very common in neurodivergence, and we need to support them through this. As an EFT therapist, we need to do more empathic conjectures maybe with a user attunement, or helping them with feelings wheel or whatever it is. Maybe you have like your specific tools to use that, but we need to support them. This is like an extra intervention that we need to use when we work with neurodiverse couples. Third is boundaries. It is really, really difficult for them to set boundaries. Why? We know about it. For those who are feeling less, for those who feel ashamed, it's hard for them to set boundaries because they feel like, I don't deserve to set boundaries. And imagine a relationship that they cannot like set boundaries. For example, a neurodivergent partner isn't able to set boundary with his family, for example. And the partner feels like whatever your friends or your family says, you go to them and you prioritize them over me. Why you're not able to sit down here and say no when we have like a commitment, when we have something to do with each other? But you chose those people over me, but they don't see it as this is not about, it's hard to say no because of this difference. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about boundaries here. And it's hard to set boundaries. And it's interesting because boundary issue, as all of you know better than me, it happens in a session with a therapist. we have a unique dynamic with the couples and with each partner. They might actually, in the process of doing couple therapy, which usually with neurodiverse couples, let me tell you now, it takes longer than usual. So you can, like, for example, I work with the couples for almost 2 years, neurodiverse couples, and after a year, they already have been like a relationship with me as their therapist, and so I see that it's not easy for the neurodivergent to actually set boundaries. So I address that. Let's talk about this. Even it's hard to set boundary with me, saying like, or even like, for example, canceling a session or something like that in the process. So it's important we address that, we talk about it in the session. Let's talk about this, because their relationship with us, therapeutic relationship they have, is a good experience. They can see like they deserve to set boundaries with their therapist, with their partners, with other people. They experience that in a dynamic with a therapist. Fourth, change. It's hard for them to change, especially for those who are in autism spectrum. They actually stick with something or someone or object, whatever it is. They just want to go with that. They really love like a routine. They want to go over the routine all the time. So imagine a partner being like adventurous, wants their partner to say like, let's go for a trip today, and say, oh, it's scary, I don't want to do that. I don't want to make change. And what the other partner, neurotypical partner feels, I'm not important to you, that you don't want to make a change to your life, or make a small change to go on a trip, to go on a hike. I just asked you to, let's go eat in a restaurant today. That's all, it's a small change. And they might come to the session asking for this small change, saying like, my partner doesn't listen to me. I just asked him to, like, let's go to a restaurant for lunch. But he's saying like, no, I prefer to stay home, right? And, or there's another example in my mind, it's about like a change. They get stuck with something or someone, with a friend. They might have only one close friend. And they spend a lot of time with that person, with that friend, because they feel the other person, the friend, understand them better. So they might even spend more time with the friend rather than compared to the partner. So what does happen? It happens in a way that the partner feels like you're prioritizing your friend over me. Fifth one, sensory issue. They might be more sensitive or having like a sensory issue, feeling, for example, touching, cuddling. They don't actually feel in the same way neurotypical partner feels. And the neurotypical partner feels like, it's like very cold hug. It was very like not emotional, like cuddling. Like, why you're so cold? You don't like me? You don't love me anymore? That's not it. That's about like some sensory issues. And a special interest, which I believe like in the chat they talk about it, they might get stuck, for example, they're going like for gym every day, right? They get stuck with doing something over and over and over, special interest, and they don't want to change it. They just want to stick with something, and that's why we know that autism spectrum, like neurodivergent, they're being very successful in one thing. Because they just stuck with something and be consistent in it, and the consistency helps them to be successful in it. And we see that in actually neurodivergent people because of this special interest and not being able for them to change. And neurotypical expectation, that's very important. Because neurotypical partner, they have expectations. Actually, you're in a relationship for expectation, but usually both sides expectations, not one-sided. And just imagine, when expectation comes without emotion in it, when the needs come without emotion, it doesn't go through. It's just like a trigger for the pursuer to pursue and for the withdrawer to withdraw, right? So the more the neurotypical partner asking for her needs or his needs or expectations, the more neurodivergent partner tends to withdraw and going away, right? What you're doing with this, I believe EFT is the best method to work with this situation, because we say like needs comes after we get to the emotion. Because we cannot access the needs without evoking the emotions. There should be emotion first, then associated with the need. Not needs doesn't come first to address. So that's why we don't talk about neurotypical expectation as, oh, your partner asking this partner that I hear you need this your partner. But let's address what's going on here first. Then in stage 2, we get to the needs. That, oh, I understand that. Because we help the neurodivergent to feel the need. Where does this need coming from for a neurotypical partner? And the last is difficulty reading social cues, which is very huge. For example, in a social interaction, like someone tells something to their partner, or someone tells something to them, and they don't get it. And the partner feels like, why are you not able to defend me? Why you did this, like, in that situation? Why you then, like, the other person wants to be friends with you, like, actually hang out with you, but you just ignore that person. And they feel like, what are you talking about? You didn't have anything, nothing happened there. But actually there's something happening there. And these are the triggers that they're bringing to the session about like social interactions and what those social cues that neurodivergent couples or neurodivergent partner doesn't get it. And it's important to address it that, oh, again, you're getting to neurotypical neurodivergent cycle. Let's address it. So that's what I'm saying. It's about like a balance between like not addressing, saying like, it's a content, let's go to the cycle, or saying like, oh, it's a problem, let's go to psychiatrist, take med to help the situation. It doesn't help. If they take med, it helps for them individually, but it doesn't change something in their dynamic. Maybe for some neurodivergent partners or clients, taking med, actually from psychiatrists might help, but actually besides working like in parallel working in couple therapy. So that's not like by itself it doesn't help the dynamic, the relationship. So we need to work on what's going on between them and what the dynamic based on the differences. So thank you so much. I just want to thank Lloyd Verbacher. Over the past 4 years, she supported me a lot, providing supervision to me, and I wish she was here to thank her because she really supported me a lot, providing giving supervision, working with neurodiverse and neurodiverse couples, and helped me a lot through this process. And it's all about my own experience working with this and my actually reading. But I'm trying to do some research on it. I haven't actually found any articles or paper on specifically neurodiversity and EFT, except some like writings or something that like I found one in ISEP research, something I found there. But these are the actual resources that is about neurodiversity couple therapy, and I'm trying to do some research on that, hopefully in the next few years, so we have more resources, because we see a lot of these couples in our practice, and it's important to address it and talk about it. Thank you so much.